The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with the voices of 1,000 different species. Translators worked overtime as representatives from across known space, debated matters of trade, security, and diplomacy. In the center of the grand circular hall, arranged in careful rows, sat the seats of power. Each chair represented a member civilization, crafted from materials native to their homeworld. One chair sat empty. It had been empty for exactly 200 years, though few in the chamber remembered why. The chair was made of oak, a tree from a planet called Earth. It was simple compared to the crystalline thrones and floating platforms used by other species. Dust had gathered on its surface despite the cleaning drones that serviced the hall each night. Ambassador Krell of the Therian Empire rose to speak. His scales glittered under the chamber lights as he gestured toward the empty chair with one of his 4 arms. The translator rendered his clicking speech into standard galactic. Honored members, I bring forward a motion of practicality. This empty chair serves no purpose. The humans are gone. They have been gone for 2 centuries. We maintain this seat out of sentiment, but sentiment does not govern effectively. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some species nodded their various appendages in agreement. Others seemed uncertain. The Valthene representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with amber light. Does anyone speak against this motion? The council speaker asked. Silence filled the chamber. No one remembered enough about humanity to argue for keeping their seat. The vote was called. The motion passed with overwhelming support. Workers would remove the chair by the end of the cycle. Across the galaxy, Commander Lisa Bryant sat in the captain's chair of the exploration vessel Horizon. Her crew of 30 operated one of the Council's many survey ships, mapping unexplored regions and cataloging resources. It was routine work, usually boring. But Lisa enjoyed the quiet of deep space. Commander, I'm picking up something unusual, Ryan Phillips called from the science station. He was young, fresh from the academy, and still got excited about every anomaly. Define unusual, Lisa said, standing to look at his displays. We're passing near the old human colony of New Terra. The planet's been abandoned for 200 years. Right? But I'm detecting active power signatures. Strong ones. Lisa frowned. Abandoned colonies didn't have power signatures. Are you sure it's not just background radiation or stellar activity? Ryan shook his head, his fingers dancing across the controls. No, ma'am. These readings are definitely artificial. And they're big. Like, planetary defense grid big. That got Lisa's attention. She moved to the navigation console. Helm, alter course. Take us closer to New Terra. Slowly, the Horizon changed direction, its engines barely whispering as it approached the dead world. New Terra had been one of humanity's early colonies, established when they were first expanding into space. According to records, the humans had evacuated all their worlds at roughly the same time, taking everything with them. No one knew where they went or why. As the ship drew nearer, alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. Red lights flashed as the tactical systems screamed warnings. Weapons lock, the security officer shouted. Multiple targeting systems have locked onto us. Evasive maneuvers, Lisa ordered, gripping her chair as the ship banked hard. Where are those weapons coming from? The planet's surface, Ryan reported, his voice tight with fear. There are active defense platforms all over the northern continent. They're powering up. Lisa's mind raced. 200 years and these systems still worked? Broadcast on all frequencies. Identify us as a council vessel on a peaceful survey mission. The communications officer complied, but the weapons remained locked on target. Lisa could see them on the tactical display. Dozens of weapon emplacements tracking the Horizon's every move. They're not responding to hails, communications reported. Get us out of range. Maximum speed, Lisa ordered. The Horizon's engines flared bright as the ship accelerated away from New Terra. The weapons tracked them for several thousand kilometers before finally disengaging. When they were safely clear, Lisa slumped in her chair, her heart pounding. What just happened? Ryan asked, his face pale. I don't know, Lisa admitted. But we need to report this immediately. The council received Lisa's report with a mixture of confusion and concern. Automated defense systems that still functioned after 2 centuries suggested technology far beyond what most species possessed. The council decided to send a proper investigation team, led by Quintar, one of the most respected researchers in the Valthene civilization. Quintar assembled a diverse team of specialists. He insisted on including Daniel Carter, a human xenoarchaeologist who lived among the Kresh. Daniel was one of perhaps a few hundred humans scattered across council space, individuals who had been found as children in escape pods or abandoned stations. He had been raised by the insectoid Kresh and knew almost nothing of his own species' history or culture. When Daniel received the invitation to join the mission, he felt both excited and nervous. He had spent his whole life studying dead civilizations, never imagining he might explore his own heritage. The Kresh, who raised him, a gentle scholar named Tick Tick, encouraged him to go. You have wondered about your people your whole life, Tick Tick clicked, her mandibles moving in what Daniel recognized as affection. The investigation team approached New Terra carefully, broadcasting their peaceful intentions and moving slowly. The defense systems activated again, but did not fire. Quintar's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. They are watching us, he observed. Analyzing us. The systems are more sophisticated than simple automatic defenses. They landed in what appeared to be the colony's capital city. The buildings stood intact, eerily preserved. Streets lay empty but clean. Power still flowed through conduits. Gardens, now wild, had once been carefully maintained. It was as if the inhabitants had simply walked away one day and never returned. Daniel felt strange walking through the human streets. The architecture felt both alien and familiar, triggering some deep, ancestral memory. Signs were written in languages his translator struggled with, though his brain seemed to recognize patterns. In the central government building, they found archives. The data storage systems were old but still functional, protected by preservation fields that had kept them safe for 2 centuries. Quintar worked to access the files while Daniel examined the physical space. The main chamber appeared to be a council room. A large table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs built for human proportions. On the walls hung images of other worlds, other colonies. Daniel counted 12 different planets in the pictures. I have accessed the archives, Quintar announced. His crystalline form brightened with excitement. There are extensive records here. Historical files, technical specifications, personal logs. This will take time to process all of it. Look for anything that explains why they left, Lisa Bryant suggested. She had insisted on joining the mission after her encounter with the defense systems. They worked through the night, the team spreading through different sections of the archives. Daniel found himself drawn to the personal logs, reading accounts of daily life in the colony. These people had families, dreams, hopes. They worried about their children's education and argued about politics. They were not so different from any other species. Then he found the final entry, dated exactly 200 years ago. It was marked as a priority message from someone called Admiral Helen Wright. Daniel's hands trembled as he opened the file. A holographic image appeared, showing a woman in a military uniform. She looked tired, sad, but determined. To whoever finds this message, the recording began. I am Admiral Helen Wright, representing humanity in the Galactic Council. If you are watching this, it means we succeeded in our departure. I want to explain why we left. The recording continued for nearly an hour. Admiral Wright described how human scientists had detected anomalies in dark space, signs of something vast and hostile approaching. They had brought their findings to the Council repeatedly, warning of a threat unlike anything the galaxy had faced. The Council dismissed them, called them paranoid, suggested humans were too young a species to understand what they were seeing. When humanity pushed harder, demanding action and preparation, They were told to stop wasting the Council's time with fantasy. So humanity made a choice. They would prepare alone. Every human colony, every ship, every citizen would relocate to a hidden location. They would take their technology, their knowledge, their future, and they would build defenses against the coming storm. "We leave behind our automated systems," Admiral Wright said in the recording. "They will protect our old worlds, and, if the threat we predicted ever materializes, they will protect you too. We do not abandon you out of hate, but out of necessity. Perhaps one day, when you finally see the truth, you will." Quintar studied the console in the abandoned government building, his energy form flickering with concentration. Daniel Carter stood beside him, watching the ancient human technology respond to the Valthene researchers' careful probing. The interface was surprisingly intuitive once they understood its basic logic. "There is a communication beacon here," Quintar said. "It has been dormant for 2 centuries, but the power systems remain stable. Should we activate it?" Lisa Bryant considered the question carefully. As the ranking council officer on the mission, the decision fell to her. What will it do? According to these files, it will send a signal across the entire human network. Every installation they left behind will receive a wake-up command. Quintar paused. "I cannot predict what will happen after that." Daniel touched the console gently, feeling the smooth surface beneath his fingers. Something about the design felt right to him, as if his ancestors had built it with people like him in mind. Admiral Wright said they left systems to protect their old worlds. "Maybe activating the beacon will give us access to more information." Lisa made her decision. "Do it. But make sure our ship is ready to leave quickly if something goes wrong." Quintar activated the beacon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep hum filled the building, vibrating through the floor and walls. Lights that had been dark for 200 years flickered to life. The console displays bloomed with data, scrolling faster than anyone could read. On the horizon, alarms began sounding. Ryan Phillips stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Commander, you need to see this. The entire planet is lighting up like a star. Every defense installation, every power station, every automated facility is coming online simultaneously." It was not just New Terra. Across the galaxy, in systems that had once held human colonies, dormant installations woke from their long sleep. Defense satellites oriented themselves and began active scans. Research stations initialized their systems and connected to ancient networks. Monitoring posts that Council ships had passed 1,000,000 times without noticing suddenly became visible as their stealth systems deactivated. The Council chamber erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from every corner of known space. Ambassador Krell demanded answers, his scales flushing dark with anger. "What have they done? What have your investigators activated?" The Council speaker struggled to maintain order. "We need more information before we panic. Where are these installations? What are they doing?" Captain Jake Morrison of the Council Security Forces received emergency orders within the hour. He was to take his team to Outpost Vega 7, one of the newly activated installations, and determine its purpose and capabilities. Jake was a career officer, experienced and level-headed, but even he felt nervous as his ship approached the massive station. Vega 7 hung in space like a sleeping giant. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest Council warship. Weapons bristled from its surface, though they remained inactive. As Jake's ship drew close, a docking bay opened automatically, inviting them inside. "This feels like a trap," his second-in-command muttered. Jake shook his head. "If they wanted us dead, those weapons would have fired already. Whatever this station is, it is following some kind of protocol." They docked and entered the station carefully, weapons ready but not raised. The interior was pristine, maintained by systems that had worked tirelessly for 2 centuries without human oversight. Lights activated as they walked, guiding them toward the command center. In the heart of the station, they found a circular room dominated by a large holographic display. As they entered, the display activated, and a figure appeared. It was Admiral Helen Wright again. The same woman from the New Terra recording, though this message was different. "Welcome to Vega 7, the hologram said. "If you are seeing this, the beacon network has been activated. That means someone has found our archives and learned the truth about why we left. I hope you are prepared for what comes next." Jake recorded everything as the Admiral explained the station's purpose. Vega 7 was one of 37 defensive installations humanity had built in secret before their departure. Each one contained weapons capable of destroying entire fleets, powered by reactors based on principles the Council had not yet discovered. Together, they formed a network that could defend the galaxy against threats from dark space. "The enemy we detected is called the Devourers," Admiral Wright continued. "They are a machine intelligence, ancient beyond measure, that consumes civilizations to fuel their expansion. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They simply consume everything in their path and move on to the next galaxy." The hologram showed images of the Devourers, massive geometric shapes that defied easy description. They traveled in swarms, each unit capable of replicating itself from consumed matter. A single devourer could become 1,000. 1,000 could become 1,000,000. "When we brought our evidence to the Council, they refused to listen," Admiral Wright said, her holographic face showing old pain. "They called us warmongers, said we were inventing threats to justify military expansion. So we made a difficult choice. We would prepare alone, but we would leave these installations behind. If the Devourers come, and if the Council finally believes, these stations will activate and fight." Jake felt cold. The power readings he was seeing from the station's weapons were incredible. A single shot from the main cannon could crack a planet's crust. The antimatter torpedoes carried enough destructive force to vaporize moons, and there were 37 of these stations scattered across the galaxy. "There is one problem," Admiral Wright's recording continued. "These weapons require human authorization to fire. We could not risk leaving them fully automated. The potential for accidents or misuse was too great. Each station requires confirmation codes from a living human before engaging in combat operations." That was when Jake understood the full scope of humanity's plan. They had left a gift of unimaginable power, but one that only they could unlock. If the Devourers came and humanity was truly gone, these stations would be useless. But if humans still existed somewhere, they could return and activate the network. It was a test. A challenge to the Council. Would they be humble enough to ask humanity for help after dismissing them so completely? Back on New Terra, Daniel studied the technical specifications that Quintar had extracted from the archives. The numbers made no sense. Human technology appeared to be centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. How had they achieved such advancement in secret? They must have been holding back, Lisa realized. When humans were part of the Council, they never showed their true capabilities. They let everyone think they were just another developing species. Quintar's form pulsed with what might have been admiration. A wise strategy for a young civilization surrounded by older, potentially hostile powers. They learned and grew in secret until they were strong enough to stand alone. Daniel felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. His people had been brilliant, careful, and ultimately driven away by the very organization that should have protected them. The question is, where did they go? Admiral Wright mentions a fallback location, but the coordinates are encrypted. For 3 weeks, the investigation team worked to decrypt the files. During that time, the Council struggled with the revelation of the Human Defense Network. Some species demanded the installations be dismantled, seeing them as a threat. Others wanted to study them, hoping to learn from the advanced technology. A few, the wise ones, wondered what would happen if Admiral Wright's warnings proved true. Then the observatories began reporting anomalies. It started with the station at Kepler 442, a deep space facility dedicated to monitoring the space between galaxies. Their instruments detected a massive distortion in dark space, something enormous moving through the void toward the galactic rim. Within days, every major observatory confirmed the readings. Something was coming. Something vast and hungry. Moving at speeds that should have been impossible. The Devourers were real, and they were approaching Council space. Panic spread like wildfire through the Council chambers. Species that had dismissed humanity's warnings now scrambled to prepare defenses. But their weapons seemed pathetic compared to what was coming. The defense network humanity had left behind was their only hope, but without authorization codes, it remained dormant. Kyle Harper received a message from the Council that changed his life. He had been living quietly on the Kresh homeworld for 30 years, working as a teacher. Like Daniel, he had been found as a child and raised by another species. Unlike Daniel, Kyle remembered fragments of his early life. He remembered training, military protocols, and, most importantly, he remembered his father had been an officer in the human fleet. The Council appointed Kyle as Defense Minister, a position created specifically to coordinate their response to the Devourer threat. It was a desperate move, hoping that a human, any human, might be able to access the defense network. Kyle traveled to Vega 7 and stood before the command console where Admiral Wright's hologram had appeared to Jake Morrison. He tried every password he could think of, every code fragment his childhood memories offered. Nothing worked. "I am sorry," he told the Council representatives watching remotely. "I do not have the authorization codes. I was just a child when we left. I do not remember enough." But the station's artificial intelligence recognized him as human. It began communicating with him, providing limited access to its systems. Through careful questioning, Kyle learned about the fallback location. The coordinates pointed to the Ember Nebula, a region of space considered too dangerous for normal travel. That is where they went, Kyle realized. That the Pathfinder cut through space at maximum speed, its engines pushing the boundaries of Council technology. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars stream past as they raced toward the Ember Nebula. Every day they traveled, brought them closer to answers about humanity's fate, and closer to the approaching Devourers. "Status report," Jake requested, settling into his command chair. Ryan Phillips, who had transferred to the Pathfinder specifically for this mission, looked up from his science station, still detecting the Devourer swarm at the galactic rim. "They have slowed slightly, but projections show they will enter Council space in 3 months and 2 weeks. 3 months. Jake felt the weight of that timeline pressing down on him. They had perhaps 6 weeks to find humanity, convince them to help, and return to activate the defense network. After that, there would be barely enough time to coordinate a defense before the enemy arrived. Daniel Carter sat at one of the auxiliary stations, studying every scrap of information they had about the Ember Nebula. The region was notorious among spacers: radiation storms, gravitational anomalies, ships that entered rarely came back out. It was the perfect place to hide if you never wanted to be found. "I have been thinking," Daniel said, not looking up from his work. "If humans could survive in the nebula for 200 years, they must have found a way to navigate the hazards safely. There might be clues we can follow." Lisa Bryant joined him, pulling up navigational charts. The old human colony records mentioned survey missions into the nebula. Most failed, but a few succeeded. If we can find their flight paths, we might be able to retrace their steps. They worked together for hours, piecing together fragments of data from different sources. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The successful missions had all followed similar routes, avoiding certain regions and using what appeared to be natural, safe channels through the worst of the radiation. "There," Lisa pointed at the display. "If we enter here and follow this gravitational current, we should avoid the heaviest storms. It will add time to our journey, but it is safer than trying to force our way through." Jake approved the course adjustment. The Pathfinder began angling toward the nebula's outer edge, preparing for the dangerous crossing ahead. As they drew closer, the view screens showed the Ember Nebula in all its terrible beauty. Massive clouds of gas glowed red and orange, lit by the young stars being born within. Lightning arced between charged particles, creating displays of electrical fury that dwarfed anything found in nature on most worlds. Beginning entry sequence, the helm officer announced. Shields at maximum. All non-essential systems powering down. The ship shuddered as it pushed into the nebula's outer layers. Radiation counters climbed steadily. The shields held. But Jake could hear the strain in the ship's systems. Warning indicators flickered on multiple consoles as the Pathfinder fought against forces trying to tear it apart. Kyle Harper gripped his seat, his knuckles white. He had never been comfortable in space, always preferring solid ground beneath his feet. But he was the closest thing they had to a human military officer, and his presence might make the difference in convincing his people to help. "Captain, I am detecting something," Ryan called out. "There are objects out there, small, artificial. They are hard to see through all this interference, but they are definitely not natural." Daniel moved to join Ryan at the science station. His heart raced as he studied the readings. Navigational buoys. They are old, human-made, but still functioning. They are marking a safe path through the nebula. Jake felt a surge of hope. If the buoys still worked, if they were still being maintained, that meant humans were alive and active somewhere ahead. Follow the buoys. Keep us on the path they mark. For 3 days, the Pathfinder crawled through the nebula. The journey was nerve-wracking. Several times, gravitational shears threatened to pull them off course. Radiation storms forced them to shelter behind gas clouds while the worst of the energy passed. But the buoys guided them true, leading them deeper into the nebula's heart. On the 4th day, something changed. The radiation levels began to drop. The gravitational anomalies smoothed out. It was as if they were entering a pocket of calm at the very center of the chaos. "We are approaching a clear zone," Ryan reported, his voice filled with wonder. "The interference is dropping. I am getting clean readings ahead." "On screen," Jake ordered. The view screen cleared, showing what lay ahead. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply stared in awe at what humanity had built. A Dyson swarm. Thousands upon thousands of orbital habitats arranged in carefully calculated orbits around a young yellow star. Solar collectors the size of cities captured the star's energy. Massive shipyards hung in space, vessels in various stages of construction filling their docks. And everywhere, ships. Sleek, powerful vessels that made council designs look crude by comparison. "By the ancestors," Quintar whispered, his energy form pulsing with amazement. "They did not just survive. They built an empire." Defense platforms immediately detected the Pathfinder. Within seconds, a dozen human warships surrounded them, weapons powered but not yet aimed. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. All flowing lines and integrated systems that spoke of design philosophy centuries ahead of council standards. "We are being hailed," communications reported. "Put them through," Jake said, straightening in his chair. A voice came through the speakers, speaking in a language that the translators took a moment to process. When they did, the words were clear and direct. "Unknown vessel, you have entered sovereign human space. Identify yourself immediately and explain how you navigated the Ember Nebula." Daniel stepped forward. "My name is Daniel Carter. I am human, raised by the creche after being found as a child. We come from the Galactic Council with urgent news. The Devourers are coming. We need your help." There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again. Softer now. "You are human? Please transmit your genetic profile for verification." Daniel complied, working with Ryan to send the requested data. Another pause. Longer, this time. Jake could imagine the discussion happening on the other end of the communication line. A human who had never known his own people, raised by aliens, now returning with a plea for help. Verification complete. "You are indeed human, Daniel Carter. Welcome home." The voice carried complex emotions. "You will be escorted to New Earth Station. Governor Ethan Ross will meet with you there. Your crew may accompany you. But your weapons must remain powered down. Understood and agreed, Jake responded. The human warships formed up around the Pathfinder, guiding it toward the largest of the orbital habitats. As they drew closer, Daniel pressed his face to a viewport, trying to take in every detail. He could see people through the windows of the habitat, going about their lives. Humans, thousands of them. Millions, probably. New Earth Station was enormous, a rotating cylinder that created artificial gravity through spin. Gardens grew inside, visible through transparent sections. Buildings rose in careful designs. It looked like a city, a piece of Earth recreated in space. They docked and were met by an honor guard of human soldiers. The soldiers wore armor that was functional yet elegant, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained power. They escorted the delegation through corridors filled with people who stopped to stare at the visitors. Daniel noticed how the humans looked at him. There was curiosity, yes, but also something like pity. He realized he must seem strange to them, a human who walked like the creche, who used their gestures, who spoke with their accent even when using human languages. He was one of them by blood, but alien in every other way. Governor Ethan Ross waited in a large office overlooking one of the habitat's gardens. He was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He stood as they entered, his expression neutral, but his posture tense. "Please, sit," Ethan said, gesturing to chairs arranged around a conference table. "I understand you bring news of the Devourers." Kyle Harper took the lead, explaining everything. The activation of the defense network, the detection of the Devourer, swarm, approaching Council space, the realization that only humans could authorize the defensive weapons to fire. He laid out the situation clearly and honestly. Ethan listened without interrupting, his face growing harder with each detail. When Kyle finished, the governor sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "Let me make sure I understand," Ethan said finally. 200 years ago, we warned the Council about the Devourers. They ignored us. We left to protect ourselves. But we left behind a network of defensive installations to protect them anyway. Now the Devourers are finally coming. The Council remembers we were right, and they want us to save them. "That is an accurate summary," Quintar said. His energy form pulsed with shame. "I cannot defend the Council's past decisions. They were wrong to dismiss your warnings. But billions of innocent lives are at stake. Entire species who had nothing to do with those decisions will be destroyed if the Devourers are not stopped." Ethan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden below. "You want to know what humanity has sacrificed for this moment? Let me tell you. We spent 200 years preparing for war. Every resource, every innovation, every moment of our existence has been focused on becoming strong enough to face the Devourers and survive." He turned back to face them. "Our children learn military tactics before they learn art. Our factories build weapons instead of luxuries. We have transformed ourselves into a warrior civilization because that is what survival demanded. We are strong now, stronger than we ever dreamed, but we have lost something essential in the process." Daniel spoke up, his voice quiet. "What did you lose?" Ethan smiled sadly. "Joy, spontaneity, the simple pleasure of creating something beautiful instead of something deadly. We have become efficient, disciplined, powerful, but I sometimes wonder if we remember how to be anything else." Lisa stood, facing the governor. "I understand your anger. The Council failed you. But is humanity going to become the same as the Council? Are you going to let innocent species die because of old grudges?" The question hung in the air. Ethan's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or shame. "I need to consult with our parliament," Ethan said. "This decision is too important for one person to make. You will be given quarters to rest in. We will reconvene when a decision has been reached." As they were led to their accommodations, Daniel felt torn. He understood the governor's anger. Humanity had every right to be bitter about how they were treated, but he also understood the desperation of the situation. If humans refused to help, billions would die. That night, unable to sleep, Daniel walked through the habitat's gardens. He found Kyle there, sitting on a bench and staring at the artificial sky above. "Cannot sleep either?" Kyle asked. Daniel sat beside him. "I keep thinking about what the governor say." The human parliament chamber was nothing like the Grand Council Hall. It was functional, efficient, and designed for serious work rather than impressive displays. Rows of seats faced a central podium where Governor Ethan Ross stood, waiting for the session to begin. Daniel Carter sat in the observation gallery with the rest of the council delegation. He watched as human representatives filed in, men and women who carried themselves with military bearing even in civilian clothes. 200 years of preparation had left its mark on every aspect of their society. "This session will now begin," Ethan announced. "We are here to discuss the request from the Galactic Council for assistance against the Devourer threat. I have heard arguments from both sides over the past 2 days. Now we must decide, as a people, what course we will take." A woman in her 40s stood. According to the identification display, her name was Senator Patricia Cole. "Governor, the council abandoned us. They called us paranoid and warmongering. When we needed them to listen, they dismissed everything we said. Why should we help them now?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Daniel felt his heart sink. The anger was still fresh, even after 2 centuries. Another representative stood, an older man named Senator Victor Hayes. "Because billions of innocent lives are at stake. Because the species who will suffer had nothing to do with the decisions made 200 years ago. Because if we let the Devourers consume the galaxy, we prove ourselves no better than the council members who failed us." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that humanity's resources were finite, that every ship sent to help the council was one less defender for human space. Others countered that the Devourers would not stop with council space. Eventually, they would come for humanity too, and it was better to fight them now with allies than later alone. Kyle Harper was given permission to speak. He stood in the gallery, addressing the Parliament directly. "I was a child when we left. I do not remember much, but I remember my father. He was a tactical officer on one of the evacuation ships. He used to tell me that being strong meant nothing if you forgot why you needed strength in the first place." Kyle paused, his voice thick with emotion. "We became strong to protect people, to defend the innocent. If we use that strength only for ourselves, if we let others die when we could save them, then what was the point of all our sacrifice? We will have become something my father would not recognize." The chamber fell silent. Daniel saw several representatives wipe their eyes. The words had struck home in a way cold logic could not. Ethan called for a recess. During the break, Lisa Bryant was approached by a human naval officer named Commander Greg Palmer. He offered to give her a tour of one of the shipyards, a gesture of goodwill regardless of how the Parliament voted. Lisa accepted, grateful for a chance to see more of what humanity had built. Greg led her through corridors filled with purpose, past workshops where engineers designed weapons systems that existed only in theory in council space. "This is impressive," Lisa said, watching workers assemble what appeared to be a dimensional drive. "Your technology is far beyond anything we have." "Come." Greg nodded, but his expression was complicated. "We paid a high price for it. Do you know what my daughter wants to be when she grows up? A weapons designer. Not an artist, or a teacher, or an explorer. She is 8 years old, and she dreams about building better guns." They entered an observation deck overlooking a massive construction bay. A warship was taking shape, its hull gleaming under work lights. The vessel was beautiful in its deadly efficiency, every line optimized for combat. "We have quantum-linked combat networks," Greg explained. "Our ships can coordinate perfectly in battle. sharing targeting data instantaneously across vast distances. We have antimatter torpedoes that can destroy planets, singularity cannons that tear holes in space-time itself. He paused. We have become very good at destroying things. And what about creating things? Lisa asked gently. Greg laughed. But there was no humor in it. The arts have diminished. Philosophy takes a back seat to engineering. Literature focuses on military strategy and tactical theory. We have transformed ourselves into a civilization of warriors and scientists, and we are incredibly efficient. But sometimes, I wonder what we lost along the way. He led her to another section of the habitat, one that surprised her. It was a museum, dedicated to preserving what humanity had been before the Exodus. Paintings hung on walls. Sculptures stood in alcoves. Music played softly from speakers, compositions from Earth itself. We keep these things, Greg said quietly, to remember. But fewer people visit each year. The young ones do not understand the value of a painting when they could be studying propulsion theory. And maybe they are right. Maybe art is a luxury we could not afford. Lisa touched a painting gently, a landscape of Earth's Grand Canyon that the artist had captured in stunning detail. Or maybe art is what makes survival worthwhile. What good is living if you forget how to appreciate beauty? Greg looked at her for a long moment. That is what Senator Hayes has been arguing. That we need to remember who we were. That strength without purpose is just violence. They returned to the observation gallery as the Parliament reconvened. Ethan stood at the podium again, his face grave. We have heard many perspectives today, the governor said. We have been reminded of old wounds and forced to confront difficult questions about who we are and who we want to be. But before we vote, there is one more voice I want this chamber to hear. He gestured to Daniel. Daniel Carter, please come forward. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He had not expected to speak. Kyle gave him an encouraging nod, and Quintar's energy form pulsed with supportive colors. Slowly, Daniel made his way down to the chamber floor. Tell us your story, Ethan said. Daniel took a deep breath. I was found in an escape pod when I was 3 years old. I do not remember my parents or where I came from. The creche who found me, Tick-Tick, raised me as her own child. She taught me about honor and curiosity and the value of understanding other cultures. He looked around at the Parliament members. I grew up never knowing my own people. I studied dead civilizations, learning about species that had disappeared from the galaxy, and always, I wondered about humans. I wondered if we had died out too, if I was the last of my kind. Daniel's voice strengthened. Then we found the truth. We found that humans survived, that they thrived. I was so proud when I learned that. Proud that my people were strong and smart enough to prepare for threats others could not see. But now I have to ask, what good is survival if we become the kind of people who abandon others? He pulled out a small data chip. Governor Ross, you said you needed to hear from the past before making this decision. I found something in the archives on New Terra, personal logs from Admiral Helen Wright, recorded just before humanity departed. With your permission, I would like to play her final entry. Ethan nodded slowly. Proceed. Daniel inserted the chip into the chamber's display system. The hologram of Admiral Wright appeared, larger than life. She looked exhausted, carrying the weight of an impossible decision. My name is Helen Wright, the recording began. In a few hours, the last human ship will depart for Haven. We will leave behind everything we built in Council space. We will leave behind friends and allies. We will leave behind the dream of a united galaxy. And it breaks my heart. The Admiral paused, gathering herself. I want my descendants to know why we made this choice. We detected the Devourers. We brought proof to the Council. We begged them to prepare, but they would not listen. And we could not force them to see the truth. So we had to make a choice, stay and die trying to convince them, or leave and prepare on our own. Her eyes looked directly into the camera, as if she could see into the future. I know that one day, the Devourers will come. I know that when they do, the Council will finally understand that we were right. And I know they will need our help. To my children and my children's children, I say this: do not let anger turn into cruelty. Do not let justified frustration make you forget compassion. Admiral Wright's voice softened. We left to survive, but we must never forget how to live. We became strong to protect people, not to abandon them. When the time comes, when the Council asks for help, I hope you will remember that strength without mercy is tyranny. I hope you will choose to be better than those who failed us. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Daniel saw tears on many faces. Even Ethan Ross had moisture in his eyes. She knew. Someone whispered. She knew exactly what choice we would face. Ethan cleared his throat. Admiral Wright was wise. She understood that the greatest test would not be survival, but what we did after we survived. She challenged us to be better than our pain, stronger than our anger. He looked around at the Parliament. I call for a vote. Should humanity activate the defense network and send military aid to Council space? The vote was not unanimous, but it was clear. By a margin of 63% to 37%, humanity chose to help. Cheers erupted in the observation gallery. Lisa felt tears streaming down her face. Quintar's energy form blazed with relief and gratitude. Kyle clasped Daniel's shoulder, unable to speak, but Ethan raised his hand for silence. We will help, but we have conditions. After the Devourers are defeated, the Council will be restructured. Humanity will have full representation. More importantly, the Council will establish protocols for treating expert warnings seriously. Never again will scientific evidence be dismissed because it is inconvenient or frightening. Tellervire. End quote. Tellervire, Jake Morrison stood. I will take those terms to the Council personally. I believe they will accept. They have learned the cost of arrogance. There is more. Ethan continued. We will send 200 warships and activate the full defense network. But understand this. Every ship we send is one less defender for our own space. We are trusting you. Trusting that this alliance will mean something when the battle is over. Do not make us regret this decision. Quote, You have my word, Jake said solemnly. Over the next week, humanity prepared for war. Kyle Harper worked with Human Military Command to establish the authorization codes for the defense network. The codes were transmitted across the quantum network, awakening the full power of the installations humanity had left behind. Daniel spent time with human historians, learning about his heritage. He discovered that the escape pod he was found in had come from a colony ship called the New Dawn. His parents had been scientists, working on advanced propulsion systems. They had died, ensuring he escaped when the evacuation went wrong. They would be proud of you, the historian told him. You helped bring humans back to the galaxy. You helped us remember who we are supposed to be. On the day the human fleet departed, crowds gathered to watch. 200 warships, sleek and deadly, formed up in space. At their head was the dreadnought Defiance, commanded by Fleet Admiral Christina Wells. Admiral Wells addressed both her fleet and the Council observers. 200 years ago, we left because we had to. Today, we return because we choose to. Let the galaxy see what humans can do when we fight for something worth protecting. The fleet engaged their dimensional drives and vanished, crossing vast distances in heartbeats. They would reach Council space in days, a journey that should have taken months. The human fleet emerged from dimensional space at the galactic rim, 200 warships materializing in perfect formation. Council observers watching from nearby monitoring stations gasped at the sight. The vessels were works of art and engineering combined. each one radiating power that made their own ships seem primitive by comparison. Fleet Admiral Christina Wells stood on the bridge of the Defiance, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays. The Devourer swarm was still 3 weeks out, but their sensors could already detect the distortion they caused in space itself. It was like watching a wound in reality slowly tear itself wider. "All ships, report status," Christina ordered. One by one, the captains of the human fleet confirmed their readiness. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, crews at battle stations. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, though most had never truly believed they would face it. Captain Jake Morrison approached the Defiance in the Pathfinder, now upgraded with some basic human technology to help it survive what was coming. He carried with him the authorization codes Kyle Harper had established, ready to activate the full defensive network. "Admiral Wells, this is Captain Morrison," Jake transmitted. "Requesting permission to come aboard." "Permission granted, Captain. We have much to discuss." Jake docked and was escorted to the Defiance's command center, a space that hummed with advanced technology. Holographic displays showed the entire galactic rim, with defensive positions marked in blue and the approaching Devourer swarm in angry red. Christina was a woman in her 50s, her gray hair cut short for practicality. She had spent 40 years in the human navy, rising through the ranks in a society that valued competence above all else. When she looked at Jake, her eyes showed both determination and the weight of responsibility. "The Council has sent us deployment coordinates," Christina said, gesturing to the displays. "They want us to establish a defensive line here, using the gravity wells of these star systems as natural choke points." Jake studied the positions. "It is a sound strategy. The Devourers will have to funnel through narrow corridors of space, limiting their ability to surround us." "Agreed. But there is a problem." Christina expanded the display, showing the full scope of the Devourer swarm. "Our intelligence suggests there are over 10,000 individual units in the swarm. Each one is capable of self-replication. If even a small number break through our lines and reach inhabited systems, they will multiply exponentially." The numbers were staggering. Jake felt his confidence waver. "Can we stop them?" "We have to," Christina said simply. "Failure is not an option." Over the next 2 weeks, the combined forces of humanity and the Council established their defensive positions. The human fleet took the most dangerous assignments, placing themselves in the paths where the Devourer assault would be strongest. Council ships filled supporting roles, their captains grateful for human leadership, while also stinging from the reminder of their technological inferiority. Daniel Carter worked aboard one of the human defense stations, helping coordinate between human and Council forces. His unique perspective, raised by the creche but human by blood, made him ideal for bridging the cultural gaps. Lisa Bryant commanded a section of Council ships, following tactical protocols that human advisors had shared. She found herself both impressed and humbled by how much the humans had learned about warfare. Every strategy was backed by simulation data. Every weapon placement had been optimized through centuries of theoretical work. "They thought of everything," Ryan Phillips said, working beside her. "I have been studying their defensive network. It is incredible. They can project force across entire sectors simultaneously." "Let us hope it is enough," Lisa replied. The human defense network fully activated on the 14th day. From Council space to the galactic rim, 37 massive installations came online. Each one bristled with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Singularity cannons that could create temporary black holes. Quantum disruptors that shattered matter at the subatomic level. Antimatter torpedo launchers with payloads measured in megatons. Kyle Harper stood in the command center of Vega 7, the station where this had all begun. He had been given operational command of the defensive installations, a responsibility that terrified him. But the automated systems responded to his commands flawlessly, 200 years of maintenance ensuring perfect reliability. "All stations reporting ready," his second-in-command reported. "We have established firing solutions for the projected approach vectors." Kyle nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. Maintain defensive posture. We fire only when the enemy enters optimal range. On the 19th day, advanced scouts detected the first Devourer units. They appeared on sensors as geometric impossibilities, shapes that hurt to look at because they existed in more dimensions than the human eye could process. They moved through space by folding it around themselves, traveling faster than light without using conventional drives. The scouts reported back before being destroyed. The Devourers were even more numerous than projected. 15,000 units. Possibly more. And they were accelerating, eager to reach the rich feeding grounds of inhabited space. Admiral Wells called a final commanders meeting, linking all senior officers across the fleet via quantum communication. Her hologram appeared on every bridge simultaneously. "The enemy will be in weapons range in 6 hours, Christina said. "I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. We are outnumbered. The enemy has capabilities we do not fully understand. But we have something they do not. We fight for people we love. We fight for homes we want to protect. And we fight together." And she paused, letting her words sink in. "Humans, we have trained our entire lives for this. Council forces, you have shown courage in standing with us, despite your technological disadvantages. Today, we prove that determination and unity can overcome any threat. Today, we show the Devourers that this galaxy is defended." Cheers erupted across the communication network. Jake felt his fear transform into resolve. Beside him, Quintar's energy form blazed with fierce light. "All ships to battle stations," Christina ordered. "Prepare to engage." The Devourers entered weapons range exactly on schedule, their swarm spreading across space like a plague. The first shots were fired by the defense stations, massive energy beams that lanced out across millions of kilometers. Where they struck, Devourers disintegrated, their exotic matter unable to withstand the concentrated firepower. But for every Devourer destroyed, 2 more took its place. The swarm adapted quickly, changing their approach vectors to avoid the most concentrated fire. They began targeting the defense stations directly, recognizing them as the primary threat. Evasive pattern, Delta 7, Kyle ordered as Vega 7, came under assault. The station could not dodge, but its point defense systems created a wall of fire that shredded incoming attackers. Still, some got through. Explosions rocked the installation as Devourer weapons tore into its shields. The human fleet engaged next, their ships dancing through space with impossible agility. The dimensional drives allowed them to skip short distances instantly, appearing behind enemy formations and unleashing devastating broadsides before vanishing again. Admiral Wells coordinated the battle with cold precision. She saw the pattern in the Devourer movements, recognized their adaptation algorithms. "They are learning our tactics. Switch to random firing patterns. Do not let them predict our movements." Daniel watched the battle unfold from his station, his hands flying across the controls as he processed tactical data. He could see how the humans fought, not with individual heroics but with perfect coordination. Each ship supported its neighbors. Each attack created opportunities for others. It was warfare, as a collective art form. Lisa's section of council ships struggled. Their weapons were less effective, their shields weaker. But human ships covered their flanks, protecting them while they contributed what firepower they could. It was cooperation born of necessity, but cooperation nonetheless. The battle raged for 6 hours. Space itself seemed to scream as weapons that should not exist clashed with entities that defied natural law. Whole sections of the defensive line buckled under the Devourer assault, only to be reinforced by ships pulled from other sectors. Jake Morrison found himself in the thick of the fighting, the Pathfinder dancing between threats that would have destroyed it in seconds. His crew worked with desperate efficiency, channeling every lesson they had learned from their human allies. "Captain, our shields are down to 30%, his tactical officer reported. "We cannot take much more of this. Hold position," Jake ordered. "We are protecting the Council transport ships behind us. If we break, they die." A devourer unit the size of a small moon bore down on the Pathfinder, its weapons charging for a killing blow. Jake prepared for the end, but it never came. The Defiance appeared between them, its massive bulk absorbing the attack. Admiral Wells's voice crackled over the communication line. "No one dies today, Captain. Not on my watch." The Defiance's main guns fired, and the Devourer exploded in a flash of exotic radiation. Jake felt tears sting his eyes. The humans were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for everyone. The turning point came when Commander Greg Palmer led a strike force of 30 ships directly into the heart of the Devourer swarm. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But Greg had identified what appeared to be a central coordination nexus, a massive structure that directed the swarm's movements. "If we can destroy that nexus, the Devourers will lose their coordination," Greg explained to Admiral Wells. "They will still be dangerous, but they will be vulnerable." Christina approved the mission, though it hurt her to send people to their deaths. "May your aim be true, Commander." Greg's strike force used their dimensional drives to punch through the Devourer lines, appearing directly beside the nexus. They were immediately swarmed by defenders, but they fought with the desperation of people who knew their deaths would have meaning. Ship after ship fell, their crews dying as their vessels disintegrated under focused fire. But they bought time for Greg to position the Defiance's sister ship, the Vengeance, right against the Nexus's hull. The ship's captain, a woman named Laura Chen, armed every antimatter torpedo in her arsenal. "It has been an honor," Laura transmitted to the fleet. Then the Vengeance detonated. A controlled explosion that channeled all its destructive force into the Nexus. The blast was visible from 100 light-years away. A new star born and dying in the same instant. The Nexus shattered, fragments spinning off into the void. Across the battlefield, the Devourer swarm faltered. Their coordinated movements became chaotic. Units that had been working together suddenly operated independently, making mistakes and creating openings. "All forces, press the attack," Admiral Wells ordered. "Do not give them time to reorganize." The combined fleet surged forward. Human ships led the way, their weapons cutting through Devourer formations that could no longer adapt quickly enough. Council ships found their courage, fighting alongside their human allies with renewed determination. For 3 more days, the battle continued. But the tide had turned. Without coordination, the Devourers were systematically eliminated. The defense stations, battered but functional, provided the aftermath of the battle stretched across weeks. Recovery crews worked tirelessly to repair damaged stations and retrieve the bodies of the fallen. Memorial services were held on every ship, human and council alike, honoring those who had given their lives to protect the galaxy. Daniel Carter stood in the observation deck of New Earth Station, watching the human fleet return to haven. The ships came back, scarred and battered, bearing the marks of the hardest fight humanity had ever faced. But they came back victorious, and that made all the difference. Governor Ethan Ross joined him, standing in silence for a moment before speaking. "Commander Palmer's family asked that you attend his memorial service. He spoke highly of you in his last transmission home." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He had only known Greg for a short time, but the man had shown him kindness and shared honest thoughts about the cost of humanity's isolation. "I would be honored." The memorial service was held in the central plaza of New Earth Station, where the monument to the fallen now bore hundreds of new names. Greg's daughter, the 8-year-old who dreamed of being a weapons designer, placed flowers at the base of the memorial. Her mother held her close, both of them crying. Daniel watched them and felt the full weight of what had been sacrificed. These were not just soldiers who had died. They were fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, friends and lovers. Each loss rippled through the community, leaving holes that could never truly be filled. After the service, Daniel was approached by Governor Ross again. "The council has agreed to our terms. They are restructuring their entire organization. Humanity will have full representation, and they are establishing protocols for treating scientific warnings with proper seriousness." "That is good," Daniel said. Admiral Wright would be pleased. Ethan nodded. There is something else. The Council wants to establish a permanent embassy here at Haven. They are hoping you might consider serving as the first Council ambassador to humanity. Daniel was surprised. Me? But I am human. Would that not create a conflict of interest? Perhaps, Ethan admitted. But you are also someone who was raised by the creche. You understand both human and Council perspectives. You are uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between our civilizations. And honestly, after 200 years of isolation, we need someone who can help us remember how to interact with other species as equals, rather than just tactical assets. Daniel thought about it carefully. The role would be challenging, perhaps impossible at times, but it also felt right. He had spent his whole life caught between cultures. Maybe that was not a weakness but a strength. I will do it, he said finally. On one condition. I want to work on cultural exchange programs. Military cooperation is important. But if humanity is going to truly rejoin the galaxy, we need to rediscover the arts and philosophy we set aside. We need to remember how to create beauty, not just destroy threats. Ethan smiled, the first genuine smile Daniel had seen from the governor. I think Admiral Wright would approve of that condition very much. Consider it done. Admiral Wright was round. Consider it done. On Council space, the restructuring had already begun. The grand chamber where Earth's empty chair had once sat was being redesigned. The new configuration would include not just a chair for Earth, but an entire section for the human delegation. More importantly, the Council was establishing scientific advisory committees with real authority to raise concerns and demand action. Captain Jake Morrison had been promoted to Admiral, placed in charge of coordinating ongoing defense efforts. The Devourer threat was defeated. But there was no guarantee it was the only danger lurking in dark space. The galaxy needed to remain vigilant. Lisa Bryant took command of a new joint research initiative, bringing together the best minds from human and Council civilizations. The technology gap was vast, but she believed cooperation would benefit everyone. Human scientists could share their advanced knowledge, while Council researchers brought perspectives shaped by thousands of years of cultural development. The first joint project was analyzing Devourer remains to understand how they functioned. If there were more of them out there, the galaxy needed to understand their weaknesses. The research teams worked in facilities built halfway between Haven and Council space, neutral ground where both sides could meet as equals. Kyle Harper remained as defense minister, but his role shifted from emergency response to long-term planning. He worked closely with Admiral Wells to establish training programs where human and Council forces could learn from each other. The goal was not to make everyone fight like humans, but to create a coordinated defense where each species contributed their unique strengths. Admiral Christina Wells herself spent a month touring Council space, meeting with leaders of various species. She spoke bluntly about the costs of the battle and the need for genuine cooperation going forward. Some species welcomed her message. Others remained skeptical, uncomfortable with human military superiority. During a visit to the Therian homeworld, Ambassador Krell approached her. He was the one who had proposed removing Earth's empty chair, starting the chain of events that led to this moment. Admiral Wells, Krell said, his scales shifting to colors that indicated shame in Therian culture. I owe your people an apology. When I proposed removing the chair, I did not understand what it represented. I did not know the sacrifice humanity made, or the gift they left behind. Christina studied him for a moment. The chair was just a symbol, Ambassador. What matters is what we do now. Humanity does not want revenge for past slights. We want partnership. We want to build something better together. Krell's scales shifted again to colors of hope and determination. Then let us build it. The Therian Empire will support the new Council structure. We will work to earn the trust we lost. Similar conversations happened across Council space. Slowly, painfully, old wounds began to heal. It was not a quick process, and there were setbacks. Some species could not get past their resentment of human technological superiority. Others worried that humanity would dominate the new council, just as the old powers had dominated before. But progress happened nonetheless. Trade routes opened between Haven and council space. Human ships carrying dimensional drive technology started appearing at council shipyards, their crews working alongside local engineers to share knowledge. Cultural exchange programs brought young humans to council worlds and council citizens to Haven. Daniel witnessed the changes firsthand from his new position as ambassador. He saw human artists rediscovering their creativity, inspired by the alien perspectives they encountered. He saw council scientists making breakthroughs by applying human theoretical frameworks to their own research. Most importantly, he saw friendships forming, connections that crossed species lines. One day, Daniel received a message from Tick Tick, the creche who had raised him. She wanted to visit Haven and see the human civilization for herself. Daniel welcomed her with open arms, showing her around New Earth Station with pride. "You have grown so much," Tick Tick clicked, her mandibles moving in the creche expression of joy. "I see both the child I raised and the man you have become. Your people should be proud of you." "I learned everything important from you," Daniel said. "How to be curious, how to treat others with respect, how to see value in different perspectives. Those lessons made me who I am." Tick Tick touched his face gently with one of her limbs. "And now you teach those lessons to others. You help your people remember that strength is not just about weapons and shields. That is a good thing." The rebuilding took years, but humanity approached it with the same dedication they had applied to preparing for war. Damaged ships were repaired and upgraded. Defense stations were reinforced and improved. New weapons were designed, but so were new exploration vessels and research platforms. Governor Ethan Ross oversaw the gradual transformation of human society. Military training remained important, but it was balanced with education in the arts and humanities. Children still learned tactics, but they also learned music and literature. The goal was to create a society that could defend itself without losing its soul. 5 years after the battle, a grand ceremony was held in the council chamber. Earth's chair, which had been removed and then hastily replaced, was formally rededicated, but this time it was not alone. Beside it sat chairs for the orbital habitats of Haven, for the research colonies humanity had established, for the military outposts that guarded the galaxy's borders. Admiral Wright's hologram was played at the ceremony, her words from 200 years ago taking on new meaning in the changed context. When she spoke about hoping humanity would choose compassion over revenge, people understood the wisdom of her foresight. Daniel gave a speech at the ceremony, speaking to an audience that included representatives from hundreds of species. 200 years ago, my people left because they had to. They were not listened to. They were not respected. But they did not let bitterness destroy them. They prepared. They grew strong. And when the moment came, they chose to help those who had failed them. He paused, looking around at the diverse audience. That choice defined who humans are. Not our weapons or our technology. Our willingness to fight for others, even when we had every reason to walk away. I hope that in the years to come, the Council remembers that lesson, that we all remember it. The applause was thunderous, echoing through the chamber. Even species that had been skeptical of humanity showed their appreciation. The galaxy had been saved, not just from the devourers, but from the arrogance and division that had nearly destroyed it from within. Lisa Bryant stood in her research lab, surrounded by a team that included humans, Valthene, Kresh, and a dozen other species. They had just made a breakthrough in understanding dimensional physics, combining human experimental data with Valthene theoretical models. The discovery would revolutionize space travel for everyone. "This is incredible," Ryan Phillips said, reviewing the results. "We could not have done this without combining our different approaches. Human empiricism and Valthene abstraction complement each other perfectly." Lisa smiled. "That is the point of cooperation. We are stronger together than apart." The Devourers taught us that lesson in blood, but at least we learned it. Back at Haven, Greg Palmer's daughter stood in front of a canvas, painting a sunset over Earth's Grand Canyon from a photograph in the museum. She was 13 now, and she had decided she wanted to be an artist rather than a weapons designer. The war had taught her that creating beauty was just as important as building defenses. Her mother watched with tears in her eyes, knowing her husband would have loved to see this. Greg had worried that humanity was losing its soul in the pursuit of strength, but his daughter's choice showed that the soul could be recovered, that the next generation could learn from their parents' sacrifices without repeating all their mistakes. Admiral Wells retired from active service, though she remained as an advisor to the human military. She spent her days writing a comprehensive history of the Devourer War, ensuring that future generations would understand both the victory and its cost. The names of the fallen were engraved not just on monuments but in the collective memory of humanity. In her history, Christina included something she had found in Greg Palmer's personal logs, a thought he had recorded just days before his death. We became warriors because we had to, but we must never forget that the point of being warriors is to protect people who create art and music and literature. We fight so that others can live in peace. That is the only reason warfare has any honor at all. Kyle Harper eventually stepped down as defense minister, feeling that someone younger should take the role. He returned to teaching, but now he taught both human and alien students. His classes on military history were popular, but he made sure to emphasize the importance of diplomacy and avoiding conflict when possible. Daniel Carter remained as ambassador for 20 years, facilitating the gradual integration of human and council societies. He married a human woman named Rebecca, a musician who had been part of the cultural exchange program. Their children grew up speaking both human languages and the clicking speech of the creche, comfortable in multiple cultures. When Daniel finally retired from his ambassadorial duties, he wrote a memoir about his experiences. The final chapter was titled The Empty Chair, and in it, he reflected on what that symbol had meant. The chair was empty for 200 years, he wrote. But it was never truly abandoned. Admiral Wright and her generation left it behind as a promise. A promise that humanity would return. A promise that they would not forget the galaxy they had left. And most importantly, a promise that when they were needed, they would answer the call. He continued. The chair is filled now, but the lesson remains. We must always leave room for those who are absent, hope for those who are lost, and second chances for those who have failed us. That is how civilizations grow. That is how we become better than we were. On the 50th anniversary of the Devourer War, a new monument was unveiled at the Galactic Rim, at the exact location where the battle had been fought. It was designed by a collaboration of artists from 20 different species, a massive sculpture that depicted ships of all kinds standing together against the darkness. At the base of the monument, a plaque bore a simple inscription, written in every language spoken in council space. Here, the galaxy stood united. Here, the lessons of division were learned in blood. Here, we proved that together, there is no darkness we cannot face. Let this monument remind us always, we are stronger as one. Daniel stood at the unveiling ceremony, now an old man, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. He thought about Admiral Wright, about Greg Palmer, about all those who had sacrificed so much to make this moment possible. Did we do well? He asked quietly, not sure if he was talking to himself or to the ghosts of the fallen. Rebecca squeezed his hand. Yes, you did very well indeed. In the council chamber, Earth's chair sat surrounded by others. No longer empty, no longer alone. And in the darkness of space, the Human Defense Network remained active. Silent guardians watching for threats that might never come. But if they did come, the galaxy would be ready. Not because of weapons or technology, but because they had finally learned to work together. The empty chair had taught them that lesson, and they would not forget it again. The galaxy had been saved. More importantly, it had been changed. And that change, built on sacrifice and hope, and the determination to be better would echo through the generations to come. Constant fire support. The human fleet, reduced now to 163 ships, hunted down the remaining units with grim efficiency. When the last devourer was destroyed, silence fell across the fleet. Then cheering erupted, wild and uncontrolled. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won, but the victory came at a terrible price. 17 human ships lost. Over 2,000 human crew members dead. Council losses were even higher. 29 ships destroyed, and countless lives ended. Greg Palmer was among the fallen, dying in the assault on the Nexus. Admiral Wells stood on the damaged bridge of the Defiance, looking at casualty reports through tear-filled eyes. Each name represented someone she had known, someone she had trained or commanded. The cost of victory weighed on her like a physical burden. Daniel stood beside Greg Palmer, watching the fleet depart. "Do you think we will win?" he asked. Greg was quiet for a moment. "I think we will fight harder than anything the Devourers have ever faced. And I think, win or lose, humanity has remembered something important today." "What is that?" "That we are stronger together than apart. That compassion is not weakness. That Admiral Wright was right when she said we had to remember how to live, not just survive." In the darkness of space, the Devourer swarm continued its approach. But now, for the first time in their ancient existence, they were heading toward a galaxy ready to fight back. A galaxy that had finally learned to work together. A galaxy that had rediscovered hope. About what humanity has become, Kyle nodded slowly. "I was 7 when we left. I barely remember Earth, but I remember the evacuation. Everyone was scared, but also determined. We were going to prove the Council wrong. We were going to survive." He paused. "I wonder if my parents would recognize what we have become." Above them, through the transparent sections of the habitat, they could see the shipyards. Even at night, work continued. Weapons of unimaginable power being built by people who had known nothing but preparation for war. "Tomorrow, they will decide our fate," Daniel said. Kyle looked at him. "What do you think they will choose?" Daniel thought about Admiral Wright's message. About the hope she had expressed that her descendants would remember compassion. "I think they will remember who they were before they became warriors. I think they will choose to help." "I hope you are right," Kyle said quietly. "Because if you are wrong, we are all going to die." Is where humanity has been hiding for 200 years. Daniel joined the conversation through the network link. "If we can reach them, if we can bring back someone with proper authorization, we can activate the defense network before the Devourers arrive." Lisa calculated the time they had. "The Devourers will reach the galactic rim in approximately 4 months. Travel to the Ember Nebula will take at least 3 weeks, assuming we can navigate the hazards. That gives us very little margin for error." The Council authorized an expedition immediately. They would send their fastest ship, newly commissioned and equipped with the best technology available. Captain Jake Morrison volunteered to command the mission. His crew would include Daniel, Lisa, Kyle, and Quintar, along with representatives from a dozen other species. The ship was called Pathfinder, and it represented the Council's desperate hope. As it launched toward the Ember Nebula, carrying the fate of the galaxy in its hull, one thought echoed through everyone's minds. Would humanity help the Council that had abandoned them? Or would they watch as the Devourers consumed everything their ancestors had once called home? Stand. The recording ended. Daniel sat in silence, processing what he had learned. His people had not died out or been destroyed. They had left by choice, driven away by the Council's arrogance. Quintar's form pulsed with deep blue light, indicating concern. "If what she says is true, if there really is a threat from dark space, we need to find out more." Lisa nodded slowly. "And we need to find out what happened to the humans. Where did they go? Are they still alive? And if this threat is real, We are going to need their help. Daniel looked at the frozen image of Admiral Wright. For the first time in his life, he felt connected to his species. And he felt afraid, because if humans had gone to such lengths to prepare, the threat they feared must be terrible indeed.